Hello, boys and girls. Today we are going to be talking about retelling and synthesizing to cement our comprehension. Take a moment and pause. Have you listened to the read aloud for today for chapter 5 and 6 of The Tiger Rising? If you have not yet listened to the read aloud, you need to return to Canvas and click on that link. We are going to be using what we've read in chapters 5 and 6 in our lesson today. If you have listened to the read aloud, you can go ahead and continue on with this video. So, readers, you're going to want to have your reading logs and your notebooks ready to review right now. Some scientists study how butterflies migrate, and some study how algae grows in ponds. There's a researcher named Dick Allington that studies how kids read and what they need to do to become stronger readers. His findings have gotten teachers talking and thinking about the best ways to help kids. Because of this, you will be helping yourselves this year. I thought it was important that you hear his findings about what people can do to grow as readers. So he found in his research that if you read a book that's about as long as Stone Fox, a book you read in 3rd grade, reading it silently should take about an hour and a half to read the entire book. He also says that kids need to actually be reading, not talking or writing about reading, for at least an hour a day in school and at home. So you should be able to read 2 or 3 books like Stone Fox in a week. If you're reading a longer book like Hatchet or The Tiger Rising, it could take you a week, between 4 and 8 hours to read books like that, but no more. So when you're reading longer chapter books like you should be as a 4th grader, you should be reading about 15 pages every 20 minutes. You could read a little faster and slower, but that's the basic pace. So look over your reading log right now. Pause this video if you need to. Think about how many pages you've read and you're reading at home. Are your goals meeting up with about 15 pages a night in the 20 minutes you're being assigned to read? This is why we fill out our reading logs, so you can look at this data and track how you are reading and improving as a reader. So go ahead right now, pause, and take a look at that reading log. Leave this video open and check your reading log out in a new tab. When you're ready, you can play the video again. So when we think about what we are going to do today to become stronger readers, our learning intention is that we are reading and rereading to notice more about a text so we can read intensely to develop thoughtful ideas. Today, you will show success when you understand the difference between retelling and synthesizing a text. So we will pause and synthesize and retell and go back and reread some parts of The Tiger Rising today to cement your comprehension. It's going to help you make sure that you truly understand what it is you've read. So let's start off by talking about the chronological retell. This is something that we do a lot, and for some of you, I might have asked you to do. We always retell chronologically. We always retell in order. We also need to make sure we're retelling the important parts, just the key details that someone needs to know in the story that keeps the scenes moving from one to the next. When you retell the big parts of a story, it's kind of like you're talking through the story with somebody. You're just giving them the gist. So here's my example of a retell of what we've read so far on The Tiger Rising, which is the first 6 chapters. So Rob gets on the bus for school that his bullies also ride. They bother him and the new girl at school. When he gets to school, Rob gets sent to the principal's office because he has this bad rash on his legs. He tells Rob, hey, when this day is done, you cannot come back to school until your rash clears up. Rob's a little excited about it, and he heads to lunch, noticing that new girl is getting in a fight at school. So we're not getting into the details about the suitcase. Even at this point, maybe I could have included something about the tiger, but I'm focusing on that main character and what that character is going through. So some retells may be a little bit different from others, but the point is you're giving the gist of the story. Now, There is a difference between the chronological retell and the synthesis, which is also a version of a summary. When you are synthesizing the story, you're retelling the part of the story you just read, but you're reaching back into other parts of the story that connect to this new scene. So it's helping you build connections, which once again cements your comprehension. So here's an idea of the retelling of what we just listened to for chapter 6 of The Tiger Rising. In chapter 6, Rob went through the school day happily, excited that he was going to be free from school for a while. At lunchtime, he avoided the cafeteria, knowing that Norton and Billy Three Munger would be there. So this is my general gist in order of what happened in chapter 6. But when I move on and add a synthesizing, I add some details from before in the story to kind of help justify why this scene is important. Adding on, Rob had been avoiding the boys as they were bullies to him. Earlier in the day, the two boys had cornered him on the school bus, grabbing him by the neck, and dug their knuckles into his skull. Their bus driver had watched, saying nothing. So there's a lot more detail, and you're pulling out information that supports why that scene was important to retell. So here's that retell again, side by side. This would be a great time to pause again if you just need to reread that for understanding. So if we think about the scene of Sistine coming back, we could do a chronological retell of that scene and saying, Rob sat on the bench outside the lunchroom studying his drawing of the tiger when suddenly the cafeteria doors had swung open and Sistine marched out, followed by some rowdy kids. Rob wanted to tell her to run away from the bullies, but he was silent. So once again, I'm going on to tell more about the story as I synthesize. I have a chronological piece, and now I'm going back and sharing a little bit of why that scene is important. This was not the first time Rob had been silent in the face of bullies. And then Rob watched Sistine turn back to the crowd and began to fight the bullies. So when you connect these two versions of retelling, you're justifying why it's important. This is a great chart to review, and it's on your Canvas page if you need a review of what it means to chronologically retell, and then to pause and synthesize as you step along the way of your story. So here is what you need to do today. You need to remember that there's a lot happening in your book, and you need to orient yourself with the text. You need to get to know your characters, your setting, and your character's problem. As you read stories, at the minimum, at the end of each chapter, you need to pause and retell to yourself or a friend, or you could even jot this down in your notes. Retelling can be chronologically, as we just went along sharing big events, and you can add some synthesizing. This is something you will practice today. Don't forget to record ideas in your reading log, and make sure you go back to your Canvas page today for lesson 4 to complete the rest of your work for the day.